Hi, welcome to the October 2017 Village of Buchanan, October 2017 Village of Buchanan Board Meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and also we're going to have a moment of silence for the 59 people who were murdered in Las Vegas. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We live in a crazy world, a lot of anger.
Senseless.
Yes. Okay, we have no minutes to approve this evening. Comments from the floor, agenda items only. Does anyone have any comments? Okay. Under old business, we have a public hearing on the proposed installation of no-through truck traffic signs. I said that good. So I am going to open up the public hearing because we do have it on the agenda. And if there's any comments from the floor. So on a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, as we talked the last meeting, there's more work that needs to be done on this. We talked about there might have to be a truck route. So there's more work to be done on this. We're not in the position to vote on this yet. Does anyone in the audience have anything to say on this? Okay. So we will continue to work on this, but for this evening, we have nothing. On a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Well, you'll adjourn it,
Adjourn
continue
it.
it, right?
Just an
May I just,
adjournment?
So just to be clear, were you looking into particular things as far as the feasibility goes now? I know I missed the last workshop.
Okay.
So
I
just want to know
think
where it's left off.
we kind of have to speak to the engineer, and we have to be specific the roads we are looking at, and I know one of the roads I'm definitely looking at is Blakely Avenue. We seem to have more and more truck traffic on that from our where our sewer treatment plant is, that area there. We have some businesses there, and they should be taking a right out of there and going out on Louisa Street, but we're seeing more and more, a lot of truck traffic coming through.
Which is a different situation than the other streets we're talking about. 'cause
Right, well-
the trucks have to go there because of the businesses.
Well, yeah, but they don't have to come in off of 9. So,
Right.
you know, we're looking at that.
So that's routing them, whereas on the other streets, trucks that
Could
do
be
not
part
have
of this.
business in the village are what we're looking at.
Okay, all
I
right.
believe, is that correct?
Well, we can combine.
So there was
and kinda
no
work.
particular, we're still researching it, there was no?
We're still researching
Okay.
it because we
Okay, thank
can't
you.
shut down all these roads and not have a truck route and say no trucks at all.
No,
So
it's-
there has to be
It's definitely
some
complicated.
type of a route, you know. We
Okay,
were hoping it wasn't as complicated, but it just
it is, yeah.
turned out to be more than that. So we're
Okay.
going to adjourn that.
All right,
Do I have to
thank you.
take a vote on adjourning it, Stephanie, or just,
No, just make a motion to adjourn it.
okay, motion, okay. A motion to adjourn,
So moved.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now we are going to open up the public hearing on proposed local law amending Chapter 211 of the Code of the Village of Buchanan. So on a motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Nick, I know you weren't here. We pretty much
No,
discussed
but we had
this at the
discussed it last
workshop.
time. yeah.
Okay, all right. Does the board have any comments on this proposed law?
Well, I see that first part, which looked like it ran into some touchy legal issues we're eliminating. I only have one thing, on the 211-46A, where it says the right of entry, the building inspector or his authorized agent, upon the showing of proper credentials and the discharge of his duties, may enter upon any land or building or structure at any reasonable hour for the purpose of making inspections, et cetera, et cetera. I'm just wondering if we should not, I think reasonable hour is vague, and I think it should be
Okay.
defined.
Yeah, I think reasonable hour, it's probably just assumed like during
Right,
work
but-
hours but not 3 in the
But
morning.
as this
Yeah.
might require legally, a legal this could get a legal challenge or, be brought up, I think that an assumption, we shouldn't leave reasonable hour to assumption that we should define it. And I'm not exactly sure what the best way to do it is, but I'm thinking one possibility is to say during village business hours, except in the case of an emergency involving health and safety.
You
I
know,
mean,
I'm
'cause
not
should-
sure if that's going to be, what's going to happen. The building inspector has offered to come in maybe over the
Evenings?
weekends or evenings if
Okay.
we're having a situation.
That was the wild
So I don't
card
want to
in this.
limit, I don't want to limit him at that
'Cause
point.
normally, he would only be working during regular business hours.
But we're seeing a lot of stuff going on after business hours.
So
There's-
a reasonable hour, what does that mean? Can you go to somebody's door at 10 o'clock at night?
Before, what about our noise ordinance?
Yeah, what is
Before
it?
8? Before
Is that our
7?
noise?
I just think there should be some more definition to that, not just
8 and
reasonable.
7? I had 8 here for between, because you can say in any reasonable hour which shall be defined as 8 AM through 7 PM.
I think we should define it,
Yeah, we can do that right there. We can add it right in.
I think that's fine, 8 AM. Is that the time he normally starts?
Anthony's
8:30.
usually here at 8:30, but
So officially, he's on the clock at 9.
8:30.
At 8:30,
to
oh,
4:30,
okay.
yeah.
So, all right, so he could, if need be, he could come a little earlier, stay a little later, but I think defining it like Stephanie just said, I think would be sensible. I just don't think we should leave it that vague.
Yep.
And that covers the
Doing 8 to
weekend,
7?
Teresa, also?
Yeah.
In an emergency on the weekend or weekends, so is it for the emergency on the weekends?
Well, I think we
or
could
is
say-
it for the weekend?
If you look at A2,
Mhm.
it says in the case of an emergency, the building inspector and his/her agent may, without a search warrant, enter the premises or parts of it to inspect at any time without permission. So when you have an
Yeah, okay.
emergency, you
That's
have a
covered.
fire, you have a gas leak,
Right.
something going on. you're
Right,
not
so
gonna limit it.
that's always there in the case
That's
of
always there
emergency.
for emergencies, right. So you want to say, going back to A, may enter upon any land or building or structure at any reasonable hour which shall be defined as 8 AM through 7 PM? Is that what you want?
What's the rest
That
of the board
sounds good to
think?
me.
7 PM, 8 PM, what does the board think?
Well, if it's a matter of having to come in the evening because people work and don't get
Yeah, well,
home till
that's the
6
thing.
or 7,
Right.
they
Alright.
commute or something, maybe 8 to 8.
That's
But,
fine.
Stay with me.
Yep.
We're hoping that this doesn't get to this
Right.
point, but, I know we've been talking about this, but I'm just going to do a quick review about this. What it's for is to help the building inspector to do his job better. And I'm just going to read some of the things, unless Stephanie, you want to summarize it, or
No,
would you
you
like?
go ahead.
Okay. So inspection and reinspection. In order to safeguard the safety, health, and welfare of the public, the building inspector is authorized to develop and carry out plans for the inspection and reinspection of all premises in the Village of Buchanan, including investigate all complaints of alleged housing violations or other unsafe, unsanitary conditions, a procedure for reinspection of all residential premises or parts thereof in violation of this chapter.
You understand what that, right, means? Reinspection, so there's a violation.
and then he
they
goes into
go in,
reins-
He goes to make sure the violation's been
clean
corrected.
up. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Steph.
Sure.
All residential properties shall be inspected/re-inspected by the building department before transfer of ownership or the issuance of a certificate of occupancy at a fee as set from time to time by the Board of Trustees. Such fee shall include issuance of a new certificate of occupancy for the property. And we've modeled this law from other communities that are doing the same thing. So it just gets into if admission is refused or cannot be obtained from any owner, occupant, or operator of a residential structure, the building inspector shall be authorized to obtain a search warrant. And just so everyone understands, we're doing this more and more because we are hearing and things are, people are seeing things. So we are trying to avoid getting into a situation with overcrowding and people violating our code. So it's for the safety and welfare of the residents that we're doing this. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Comments from the audience? Does anyone have a comment on this?
Yes, I do. Eileen Absinger, 138 Tate Avenue. Where are the residents' rights and where can they locate them? Meaning, can they see the code on the website?
Yes,
Okay, and they can come into the village hall and
Absolutely.
observe them, read them, and do anything they want with that. Okay, so it's on the website. And you mentioned at the workshop that if there is a need of bringing your house up to code, which could cost anywhere from $100 to $30,000, as was mentioned, if the homeowner doesn't have that money, what happens? And they want to sell their house.
You know what, I
Stephanie?
think this is basically covering the situation of people over the years that have, there's people who have done additions here and it wasn't caught. There's people who have done, made single families into two families. People who have done electrical work without a licensed electrician. I could, added bathrooms. I can go on for, so that was things that they needed to get permits for.
Right.
So now, as they're selling their house, if they didn't do that, we want to make sure that people are safe here. They're not just doing
I
things,
understand. I was at the
willy-nilly.
workshop. I
Yeah,
understand this
so,
completely.
that's
This is for
the
the
basis
audience
of the
that
whole
is
thing.
not at the workshop.
Okay, all
And
right.
doesn't hear the comments. I go back to my question. If it costs you $30,000 and the statement was, if I wrote it down verbatim, the village would let residents know that new CO is needed and brought up to code before selling in order to raise the price. I go back to, if it's going to cost you $20,000 to bring your house up to code electrically, plumbing, new piping, whatever the case might be, maybe they need a new deck. And the new owner looks at this and says, well, I didn't want this, I would have done that. So you're asking the resident, whether it's an older resident or a younger resident with a family, to spend that money and then not be able to possibly recoup it because you're stating, and then you could, in order to raise your price to cover your costs. Well, that's all fine and well, and that's a little bit out of the box here.
Well, no, if I can clarify that, I think that what I was talking about, it was my comment, and what I was talking about is I have seen people who don't know that their village or their town has passed an ordinance like this, and so they go ahead and they list it because they don't know they need a new CO. They know they've put on some rooms and maybe a bathroom or some things that they don't have permits for. If your residents were to know, and I had a client like this, and that's who I was referencing, he was, he put it on for sale, he got an offer, we were in contract, and then, he was told, hey, by the way, your village requires this. And so he went, and he said, okay, come on in, and it was between $20,000 and $30,000 in repairs. So my comment was that if our residents knew ahead of time that you're gonna need to do this, before you put your house up for sale, it's probably a better idea to go to Anthony and to say, or a building inspector, whoever it might be, whenever it is, I'm gonna need to pull a new CO, can you come on in and tell me what I need to do? I did have a client with a deck like you're talking about as well, and what that village in particular allowed him to do was not to take down the deck, but put new railings up. So,
Well, that,
Yeah.
those are like $1,000
Yeah.
right there. And that was a small deck that I know of with the homeowner in Buchanan that had to do that. What she opted to do was to just say, I'll take $900 off the price. That was the other thing. But what I'm asking is that, what if the homeowner doesn't have that $30,000 to upgrade? What is their recourse? They don't get a new CO.
Just because I understand what you're asking, and I want to clarify something. I mean, certain non-conforming aspects of your house will be grandfathered and transfer with the sale. However, I'm not exactly sure what we're talking about here. Like, certain electrical things, if you decide to do an addition on your house, in order to get the C of O for, they can go back and force you to do upgrades, like, for example, to go to hardwired smoke alarms instead of battery-powered smoke alarms. I don't think that everything that's grandfathered is lost when you transfer the house. So partly we're talking about work that was done without a permit, or work that was done illegally in the case of adding an apartment, a living space.
A bathroom.
So to some extent, if you do work without permits and that does not conform to your C of O, for like adding an apartment, tough duty. Then you have to pay the price at the point of transfer. And that's part of why we're doing this, because we want to keep people conforming to the code and we don't want illegal apartments coming up here and there. So as far as what you're asking, what I want to know is what, I don't know what does have to get redone to get a C of O that is not grandfathered. Do you lose your grandfathered status for something other than smoke alarms? When I got a new boiler, the new code required 1-inch sheetrock above my heater, so I had to redo the sheetrock above for, about a 10 square foot area above my boiler when I did that. So there are certain things that you have to do that the building inspector will require that you do in conjunction with new work. But I don't think that everything that's grandfathered in, sizes, setbacks, and, so it's more illegal work and certain upgraded safety standards on the electrical and fire side.
All right, hypothetically.
So you're right, you could get hit with some
That's
an
right.
expense,
I mean,
but I just want to be clear,
there is
what
an
is it that has to get redone?
Right, and where do we find that? I mean, is there any way to identify that for the homeowner that may want to
I
sell?
think Anthony should be able to give us an outline
I
of
think
that.
before they go to a realtor, we're not the only community doing this.
No, I know
so-
that, but
before
these
anyone
these
sells a
residents
house,
need to know.
they should speak to the building inspector and get his, thoughts on what they're doing.
Well, can we
and what
ask
would be a
Anthony
problem.
to make an outline of what would be necessary to bring up to code?
It's a good
I
idea.
think, let me
That's
make a
good.
comment about, I think what you're outlining, Eileen, that if the individuals are not up to code, they're also nullifying their insurance on their house.
But a lot of insurance companies
But
don't even
what I
ask.
suggest to the homeowners, I found this out myself, and I went to Anthony, all homeowners should come into the village and contact Anthony, look at their folder, and make sure that their premises are up to code, that any permits they have that are outstanding have been closed out, and any illegal work that was done has to be fixed, because it's to their advantage. Otherwise, if they have a fire and you've done something against code, it doesn't have to be anything to do with the fire, the insurance company is going to say, you're not covered.
No, I agree with you. I
So
don't
it's
disagree
to their
with that.
advantage to do this. And if they have to come in and they have to find out that, I don't think there's an answer to your question. Like if somebody said, a person who doesn't have much money and they own the house, but they need $50,000 to bring it up to code. Well,
Even 5,000, Rich.
Whatever,
you know how
it's-
expensive electricians are.
there's nothing we can do about that. What can we do about it?
No, I'm just asking, what recourse does the homeowner have in regards to, can they sell their house as is? Does that require a new CO? So that the new owner then assumes that
Negotiated in the price, like you
Right.
said.
Yeah,
with
you're
the-
going to negotiate
Well,
a price.
Well, we should try to, get an outline from Anthony of the types of things that people need to be
At least aware
right
of.
Yeah, and I think that in conjunction with this resolution, we should do a mailing or a separate insert with the newsletter, giving people a heads up on this, explaining what the new law is, if they are, if they think that there may be, have been any work on their, people could have bought their house and not even, and had it 5, 10 years and not even know that there was something, and with a stricter law regulating the passage and getting a C of O, something could come up on the next sale that didn't come up on a sale a few years ago.
Right, that's
So,
part
so
of
I
what
think
I'm
we
saying.
should outline this and explain it in a mailing or a newsletter insert with some input from Anthony, the building inspector.
Okay, I think that's a good idea, personally speaking. And, put it on the website, whatever else you can do so that people, have an idea of what's going on. It's great that you pass these things, but if the residents really don't understand this,
It should,
And
And they
should-
need to know, because I
Yeah.
have had clients that
yeah,
don't know.
you don't need
Yep.
to know at the end.
But I think sometimes the banks pick a lot of this stuff
What
up.
happens is,
And title searches are, like, I can't,
Well, the
like, when you
title-
buy property, it's important to do
well,
a
the title
title search.
searchers will pick up if there's an open permit that was never
Okay,
closed.
okay.
But that's people who said, I'm gonna put a deck on, let me pull a permit, and then they don't bother to close it. That's a violation.
Okay.
That would be taken care of. This is for people who didn't even pull a permit. So there's no record for a title company. An appraiser might, occasionally, the ones I've seen don't care, they appraise the house, and unless the bank attorney is really looking to say, wait, this says the appraiser said 3 bedrooms and 2 baths, and I'm showing 2 bedrooms, they don't care that much. It appraises out, they move
Okay.
on. So that's why we're trying to bring it to, and to Eileen's point, it hurts the homeowners in some way, but the buyer then is buying a disaster with all this illegal work, which isn't fair either. So that's what we're trying to address.
Well,
really
it's
with
always
both.
buyer beware.
Right,
Yeah.
but if the buyer,
That's-
pulls their title and does everything they should do, and they don't know that, this was illegal and that was illegal, and there's no, whatever. That's the only thing we're trying to do here, really.
No, I understand what you're trying to do. I
Yeah.
really do.
There
I'm
will be
saying that
some.
as you read this, and as I sat here during your conversation, I go to A, number 2. In case of emergency, the building inspector and his or her authorized agent, without a search warrant, may enter. So Teresa, you said fire, gas leak. Well, if there's a gas leak, Con Ed constantly splashes, call Con Ed.
Yeah.
Why would the building inspector even be called? He wouldn't be. Not necessarily. You got a gas leak,
Depends,
you're
yeah.
calling Con Ed, and
Oh,
you're
yeah,
calling the fire
definitely.
department.
You're gonna call Con
You're not
Ed,
gonna
it's an
call the
emergency
building
situation,
inspector.
and then our fire department comes out, this is what happens.
I
If
know.
somebody calls in a gas leak, you have a lot of people there, and they
Right,
wanna
but
make
what
sure
I'm
that
saying
people in the
is
house
that
are
you're not
safe.
gonna call the building inspector in case of this emergency.
What
What
if there was
emergency?
an
Give me an
explosion?
emergency
What if
that
there
you
was
would
an
call.
explosion in the house, and you're not sure if the house is structurally sound now? That's an emergency.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
But
there's a
initially,
fire?
a gas leak, you're not gonna call the building inspector.
No, he's not the first responder,
No.
but it's,
No.
it's,
You're gonna call
But wouldn't the
Another one.
fire chief, or the fire inspector go in to find out this information rather than the building inspector?
For, if there's a gas leak?
Yeah, if there's an explosion.
They have if there's an well, then the building inspector would have to check for structural integrity. What if there was an explosion? Now, do you know if it's safe? Do you know if that house is safe at that
No,
point?
I know.
You know,
I'm just-
so I'm just saying
I'm
that
just
too.
saying, a gas leak, my first call is Con Ed and then the fire department, or vice
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
versa.
Yep.
A fire, I'm gonna call the fire department.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't understand this in case of emergency, the building inspector without a search warrant. So my next question goes, as a village resident, what are your rights when the building inspector appears at your door? I think that's important for the residents to know.
Mm-hmm.
Stephanie?
You you can always, as a resident, say, you're not coming in, and the building inspector has to go get a warrant. He's
Okay.
not gonna break your door down, and he has no authority to break your door down.
If he comes with the police, what's the option?
If they think it's a danger, something really dangerous, the police could probably get in. The building inspector cannot. And if it's an emergency, like a fire, or somebody's made a complaint that we hear screaming and, blood curdling, whatever, and he's accompanied, I would say that you probably don't need the building inspector, you need the police to go in.
All right,
But-
well,
and
if
that's
it's
what-
blood
that's
curdling
why-
screams, I would expect them
The
to call the police,
Right,
not the
but if
building
But if
inspector.
the building inspector was there, would he really have to go in on something like that? No,
No.
the police.
Okay, so
there's a
the
fire-
resident has the right to decline the
yeah.
inspector, the building inspector's entry.
And he even did when we were keeping A in, which we've now gotten rid of.
Right.
The building inspector's authority is always limited to, we're not breaking down doors. He's not gonna call the police and have you arrested. He can go get a warrant. And he has to
Okay.
have probable cause.
I just
He'll get a
want it
warrant.
stated for the record,
Yep.
that's all.
Yep.
But like
Just-
if a tree falls on somebody's house,
And he thinks
the
it's
buildings,
dangerous.
I would consider that an emergency for the building inspector to determine how much damage was done to the house and whether it's structurally sound for people who live in
That's a
it.
good emergency, yeah.
That's, in that case, I don't think the person
Right.
would have the right to say, no, you can't come in my yard.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm
Yeah,
just
we're not,
posing the
we're not
devil's
looking
advocate
to hurt
here.
anybody. We're
I
trying to
know.
make it safer for people. That's,
But I don't
and
like
what-
Big Brother to begin
Yeah.
with, so, you know,
Yeah.
this starts to get a little bit, so people need to know their rights,
Sure,
that's all.
no, absolutely. Yeah, we're not,
Let's see, did I have another question?
what were the other communities, Steph, that had passed this legislation? Is it Town of Cortland?
Dobbs Ferry.
Dobbs Ferry,
Cortland has something similar. Peekskill is all over it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's communities where they've seen, I mean, like Anthony's had a tough time, and he's called me several times to say, I asked, can I come in? No. Is this all that much different? No. This allows the village before a sale, at the very least, you have to bring everything up to code. It gives the building inspector hopefully some authority in an emergency to say, you know what, there's a tree on your house, it's about, you need to get out. But is he gonna come to the door, knock down your door and say, I have reason to believe, you have 2 illegal apartments in here? No. He's gotta have probable cause, or a judge isn't gonna issue a search warrant.
Right.
And that's what he needs to do.
Okay, so when he
Another thing
has the
is-
search warrant, then he can go in.
Which he has to get from a judge, and he has to
Right.
show probable cause, and that's how the judge would, so you'd have to say, I have pictures, I have complaints, I have,
Another thing is that the building inspector cannot just knock on a door because he thinks there's an illegal apartment on there and say, let me come in and look around. However, if there's a call to that house by the fire department or the police, and the police get there and they see that, there's all these rooms that are curtained off for people to live in, that police officer can then report that, and then that gives the building inspector a reason to go in.
Right, I have no problem with that.
And this is, I think the illegal units is the biggest thing we're looking to deal with in this change.
And that gets into the safety of our firemen too, because you see in other communities where the rooms aren't curtained off, they're actually boarded up, and the house becomes a maze, so that gets our
Oh, no,
firemen
I
into
understand the
a
fire
huge
safety on that.
dangerous
Yeah, I don't want the
situation.
firemen in danger either. Okay, for instance, there's a little house on the end going around the curve on Tate Avenue. It's for sale with HUD and a realtor. Supposedly, it has some issues. Now, the bank, I presume, it's in foreclosure, so the bank has it. Does the bank have to come and do anything to get this up to code, this house, before it goes
They
into
certainly
sale?
should, will they? They absolutely would be.
They would be subject to this
They
law
should be subject
also.
to our laws. Are they? And do they care? I mean, they have zombie properties everywhere and do nothing about it all the time, which is why the state legislature is trying to pass some more stringent laws about that. But yeah, they should be.
Okay, and they should be.
Yeah.
Should be is not, they are.
Well, is that law
Okay.
passed? There was New York State legislation to require banks to do maintenance on
Yeah.
zombie properties that they hold the papers on. Is that passed? Do you know if that was passed?
I don't know. I think it
It
was
was,
actually.
it was in the works. I think it was, I think it did
was
pass.
too. I'm just sort of a little sarcastic about it because I mean, they're everywhere and I
Sure,
don't see that who's
sure.
going to enforce it. We have a law, but really? The banks, they own thousands and thousands of them all across the United States. And
Well, I'm
so
just
there's
talking
some
about.
recourse if somebody takes it. So like what you're asking, yes. But is Anthony gonna, well, I guess he would know that there's a house for sale. Is he gonna really spend hours and hours reaching out to a bank who owns a foreclosed property to make sure that they're doing, I don't know. It becomes
Okay, so
complicated.
on that little memo, it is also important to put any new homeowners who, may not, there may be a CO on that house, but unfortunately, it may not be up to code.
Right.
So is there any
Right.
way to make a little statement about new homeowners, blah, 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 Because if Anthony, he may see that the sign is down, but there may be some other pressing issues that he doesn't get to. I don't know. My last question is, and I asked this the other night, cash sales. What's going to happen with the cash sales since there are lots of them? where you don't, you're not going through a bank, you're not going through an inspector, you're selling like that little house on 4th and Center. That was, I don't know how that was bought. It could have been a cash sale. I have no idea. It's been fixed up beautifully, and I'm sure it's up to code now.
Yeah.
But if it was a cash deal, what happens?
I have no idea. I mean, if somebody wants to sneak around it, they're going to. For me, as an attorney who does real estate, I tell my cash buyers all the time, pull title, which gives notice to your community.
Okay.
Because somebody's in the file, and somebody's got somebody searching the records, right?
Right.
So you've got some notice. Some cash buyers.
But you're not
choose
searching
not
the
to do that.
code. You're searching permits that might not have been completed or
No, I'm
corrected.
saying it gives Anthony, it
Gives
gives
him a heads up.
our building inspector
Okay.
notice that somebody's looking to buy, or somebody's selling and buying, at which point he should, step in and say.
Okay,
You know,
all
you have to
right.
bring
So
this to code.
that's another point that,
Right.
people should be aware of.
Correct.
That if you do a cash deal, because, there's cash out there and people are buying. So,
Oh, yeah.
that's another situation that you don't think of. Not everybody goes through a bank and has a mortgage.
Correct.
So, all right, right now, that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Eileen.
I just one thing I'd like to ask. It says on the right of entry, upon the showing of proper credentials. What, do we have ID cards, Kevin?
We just have the machine, we're gonna start doing them now. Yeah.
Okay.
We just got that about last week, so
Okay.
we're gonna have to start, we're gonna put a template together for an ID and then issue them to people.
And then he also has, I guess anybody could get the shirt, but a Village Buchanan, and it has building inspector shirt.
Yeah, but he should have ID if he's coming in.
Photo ID.
Yeah, photo ID.
All right, if anybody ever has any questions of anybody from the village that shows up at your door, please call the village hall just to verify that they're an employee, if, you're concerned.
So what did we decide? We're gonna put this in, just to
I'm sorry,
recap for my own
excuse me.
notes. You're gonna do a mailing?
We're gonna post it on
Right.
the website,
Yep.
and I don't know, we're gonna do
Well, I
an
think
insert?
the mailing would be, not just to send out this, but to,
So let them
to
know.
explain what the, in lay terms, to explain what the change is and what people might need to address if they were buying or selling in the village.
Yeah, because I agree, that's huge.
With some input from Anthony as far as what things have to be, what things are not simply grandfathered and rolled over, but would have to be updated by law, whether it's electrical, fire code, whatever it is. And we
And
need to
even
get the-
something like a bulletin, like bullet point, more of a bullet point thing, so it,
Yeah, something that explains
Excuse me.
the new
what-
amendment to the law, as well as what people need to be aware of for their own practical use.
Once we've, spoken to Anthony, and he can give us a draft, and then we can see what would be the best ways to deliver it.
Because people in other communities really don't know.
Yes.
It's huge not to know. You
yeah.
need to know.
I want
Yeah.
everyone to be aware. That's,
And
I
how many
think we
people
want
really
everyone
pay
to be aware.
attention to every local law that comes through? I mean,
But this is, this is important.
This is one
And-
that's-
And there's a reason why we're doing it. We're not doing it to hurt people, but,
right.
okay. I'm sorry, yes, Eileen.
Hold this over then, for the draft from Anthony? I would appreciate that so that.
Well, I think that's doesn't affect the vote. I think that affects, that's just a communication that we need to do. I don't think that
What
we,
this
I
is
don't think
about.
that's something that alters this resolution.
No, this is just, with Anthony doing, he'll probably do the thing, but it's just a follow-up and to really bullet point what it means. What's the board's pleasure?
Are we going to vote on
Are we
this?
ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
fine.
Nick, if you could please read the resolution.
Okay, let's see, I have last month's, this month's, I don't know if they were,
Oh, I'm sorry, I went out of order. Motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Now, resolution authorizing the adoption of local law number 5 of 2017, amending Chapter 211 of the Code of the Village of Buchanan.
Okay. Whereas a resolution was duly adopted by the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buchanan for a public hearing to be held by said village board at the Municipal Building, 236 Tate Avenue, Buchanan, to hear all interested parties on a proposed local law amending Chapter 211, Section 45, entitled Administration and Enforcement, and Section 46, entitled Right of Entry, Complaints, Penalties for Offenses, to the Code of the Village of Buchanan. And whereas notice of said public hearing was duly advertised in the official local newspaper, and whereas said public hearing was duly held at a regularly scheduled meeting of the village board on September 5th and October 3rd, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 236 State Avenue, Buchanan, New York, and all parties in attendance were permitted an opportunity to speak on behalf of or in opposition to said proposed law or any part thereof, and whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buchanan, after due deliberation, finds it in the best interest of the Village of Buchanan to adopt said local law, now be it therefore resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buchanan hereby adopts said local law number 5-2017, amending Chapter 211, Section 45, entitled Administration and Enforcement, and Section 46, entitled Right of Entry, Complaints, Penalties for Offenses, of the Code of the Village of Buchanan, a copy of which is attached hereto and made a part of this resolution, and be it further resolved that the village clerk be and he hereby is directed to enter said local law in the minutes of this meeting and in the local law book of the Village of Buchanan, and to give due notice of the adoption of said local law to the Secretary of State of the State of New York.
Okay, thank you. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Under new business, resolution authorizing the engineer to create specification and for the clerk to advertise for bids for water meter replacement project. So before we read that, would you like to go into that, Kevin? We've talked about this before, but for the audience.
Sure. Over time, I think these water meters have been in houses and the residents for, I would say, decades, many decades. So we started talking about, let me back up a little bit. We got to a point where these meters are getting phased out as well. So we bought up so many of them so that we would have them on hand in case we needed to repair them. Now we're getting to a point where there's just so many of them where we're starting to have problems with at this point. And it does tie up a lot of time twice a year by one of the staff members going house to house. You know, you get human error involved in that as well. The new meters that we were looking at and would like to draw up specs for would be a meter which would have a remote. We kind of saw a few companies come in. They have radio frequency one, but that would require a lot of equipment update that you'd have to put in a truck. You'd have to drive down the road. So it's still taking up a lot of time. The one we seemed to like better was one that had a cellular attachment that would send off a reading from the meter every hour, and then it would go over any carrier's phone, cell phone towers, to a place where it was read in the cloud, and then we would have it loaded into our computer. So it would also help us to kind of collect and detect, not collect, detect water leaks, because now, it could go 6 months and somebody could get a bill for over $1,000 when, this system could detect this and start to, we get a better idea of our use, what was coming in and what's coming out. So I think it would help us also more accurately bill for the water in the village as well. So, it has multiple purposes here at this point. They gave us an estimate that it was kind of a three-part pricing system. It's kind of like the meter was almost 100 or a little over 100. The cellular part of it was about 100 or 100 or so, and then the install was about that same price. So we figured it'd probably be about $300 plus per household. About 750, so it's a little over 240, I think, when I multiplied it all out.
$250,000.
What's that?
$250,000 or so.
Yeah, so we also have a special water fund in place which has over $340,000 in it, which is kind of was set up for this kind of purpose, these large infrastructure updates that you would need from time to time, so.
Does that upgrade, is that something that gets billed to each household? Or is that just, it comes out of our
It would come out of our
reserve
special
in our
water fund.
water
I mean, the
fund?
meters are ours, you know, the meters
Oh,
are
okay.
the property of the village, so.
Okay.
We would be reinstalling them in the businesses and the households.
Eh.
So it's kind of gonna help us move forward quite a
Yeah.
few decades. I mean, most places are not reading house to house anymore like we do, and like I said, it ties up a lot of time.
So is there, aside from the initial outlay of installing these, is there an ongoing cellular charge if these are being, if these are operating through, are they operating, you said one of the
There was a
options is
certain
that-
monthly fee, and it was very minimal monthly fee that we would probably have to charge during our, there would probably be a technology fee. I think that's what a lot of places were doing, a little technology fee, whether it was $1 or $2, but that would cover the coverage part of it. And we went up and saw a meter similar to this in Cold Spring, and they showed us the system, and it really worked. They were very happy with the system and how it worked. So we thought that it would be something that would work out well here as well,
So
especially
once,
with a small staff that we have.
so once we get the bids back in, we'll be able to kind of,
Right, we'll put the specifications together, we'll get the bids back, and, you know, we hope it comes in our price range or the budgeted amount of money. And then we decide to either move forward with the
Right.
lowest bidder, the lowest responsible bidder, and move the project
we'll
forward.
see what's out there in the marketplace in terms of
Correct.
technology.
Are these, is this something that the Russians could hack into and cause our water bills to go up?
Yeah. No, probably not, but,
So then this would be similar, because I have a property in Peekskill, and they just replaced the water
Their water
meter.
meters,
And then they
yes.
put, I don't know, it was something on the outside, I think that's the thing that sends, and I'm telling you, it took him like 20 minutes, he was done. He
It's quick
replaced the
install,
meter,
yeah.
boom, it was not, you know,
they replaced the water meters up at my house, the guy, it was in and out in about 35 minutes. He
yeah,
did the
it's
install.
fast. And you know, sometimes it's hard for the meter reader, Jerry, to get to
Into
some
the
places, because
access.
people aren't home, and there's no outside meters, and, you know, so, and now you're also saying that it's like almost impossible now to get replacement parts. So we really have
The
to
meters
move
we're using,
forward.
we had bought quite a few at a certain point,
Okay.
and I don't know how many we have left yet, but
Okay, but, yeah,
it's time to.
it's time.
Well,
Technology.
the ones that work on, if they work on a cellular signal and they're in the house, will they transmit?
Well, that's what they test when they install it. They make sure that it's getting the proper reading.
Because I assume, because like mine is outside, that everybody's was outside. Some of them are in the houses.
They were saying in most cases that they would be able to have them inside the house. They'd be able to check them as they were installing. I think they'd have like a tablet or something like that to see what kind of reading, strength of signal they would get. And if necessary, I guess they could probably mount them outside if they had to. But he said in most cases, they don't run into that problem.
All right. So I'm going to have trustee Jackson read this one.
Okay. Village of Buchanan resolution authorizing the engineer to prepare specifications for the clerk to advertise for bids for water meter replacement project. Whereas the Village of Buchanan feels that it is necessary to replace the water meters throughout the village to allow more accurate reporting and billing of water usage in the village, and whereas the new water meter technology will reduce village manpower, increase detection of leaks in the water system, and allow more frequent billing. And whereas the Village of Buchanan, the Village Board has determined that the cost of such project exceeds the limits mandated by state law for project requiring bidding. And whereas the village has established a special water fund for the purpose of funding large water infrastructure projects such as the aforeseen water meter project. Be it therefore resolved that the village engineer is to provide the village clerk with such specifications as necessary to complete a proper bidding package. And be it further resolved that the village clerk shall advertise for such bids after receiving such specifications from the village engineer.
All right, thank you. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Rich, if you could read the next two, resolution authorizing hiring of seasonal personnel is the first.
Whereas during the fall season, it is the custom of the village to employ staff on a seasonal basis to assist at the highway department with the leaf removal season, And whereas it is desired of the village to hire staff for a period of time beginning on October 6, 2017, and concluding on December 21st, 2017, now be it therefore resolved that the following individual be and hereby are appointed, subject to the village hiring policy as a fall seasonal employee to be paid at the hourly rate set forth next to their names. Albert Jacobs, $11 an hour. Be it further resolved that the village administrator be and hereby is authorized to place the aforementioned individual on the village payroll for the fall season and to pay the salaries as set forth above.
Okay, thank you. Before we vote on this, Kevin, we talked about this last month, that we had extra money left from the summer, the summer, and also, this person is gonna be mostly working on our catch basins.
That's what we really want to do. We have a lot to catch up on, a lot. And it seems like there's new ones every day that keep popping up. And
yeah.
so we want to try to get to as many of them as we can. So soon enough, 2 of the guys are going to be on the back of the truck. I think we start the 5th, I have it written down,
middle of
the
October,
16th it
yeah.
starts. So 2 of them will be on there.
Cleaning out the catch
that?
basin? What do you mean, cleaning them out?
Not cleaning them out, rebuilding them. You know, some of them are block or brick or whatever, and
Oh,
they're
just
collapsing, and you'll
collapsing,
see
yeah.
like little potholes almost develop next to it. And we have quite a few that we need to be repaired.
Okay. So, on a motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye. Next, Village of Buchanan resolution authorizing the engineer to prepare specific specifications and for the clerk to advertise bids for Bannon Avenue Water Pit Project. Whereas the Village of Buchanan, at the recommendation of the village engineer, put out to bid necessary repairs to the Bannon Avenue Pit in a resolution dated September 6, 2016, and whereas the village received 2 bids significantly higher than the budget established for a aforesaid project, and whereas the Village of Buchanan engineer has reviewed the bid specifications and made modifications to the specifications to reduce the cost of said project, and whereas the village board is desirous of rebidding the Banning Avenue water pit, and whereas the village board has determined that the cost of such repair work exceeds the limits mandated by state law for projects requiring bidding, now be it therefore resolved that the Village of Buchanan will reject the previous bids for the Bannon Avenue Pit project, and that the village engineer is to provide the village clerk with such specifications as are necessary to complete a proper bid package. And be it further resolved that the village clerk is authorized to advertise for bids for the repair work after receiving the specifications from the village engineer.
Okay, Kevin, do you want to go into this again?
Sure.
About our first bid process and,
We bid this out, like I said, we went out to bid September 6th of 2016. We put the specifications together, bid it out. We got 2 bids. I think one was for $146,000, the other was for $160,000. When we were putting this together, the engineers estimated the job to probably be about half of that, so, you know, our budget was significantly less for that. So at that time, he said, let's not accept the bids at this point. He went back, he met with the Department of Health and some of the engineers down there on ways that we could reduce the costs, and he also met with consultants. He also said one of the big issues that it is that it's only got one entry point, so it's a confined space. He said a lot of people, that drives up the cost of the project for them. So part of the bid spec creates another opening so that it wouldn't be considered a confined space. So after this, he met with a couple of contractors, and he thought that a few of them would be somewhere closer to the budget that we had established for the project. So he suggested that maybe we try to rebid this at this time. So I mean, the Bannon Avenue Pit is one of the 2 main entry points for the Montrose Improvement District water. And there was a lot of concerns about the pit, so we really, it's important that we get back to this and finish this project. We've received the necessary extension from the Department of Health for this project for another full year. So we're doing what we have to do with working with the Board of Health as well. So
okay, good, all right, so. Okay, on a motion,
So moved.
second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving along to information from officers and departments. Justice Court Report, August 2017. The amount is $3,571. One of the other reports is $1,050. So that's received and filed. Police reports, just a quick update for August. There were 9 animal complaints, 3 arrests, 4 assisting other agencies, 7 call for service, assist citizen, there's 7 of those, civil disputes 2, disorderly conduct 2, 2 fire calls, 1 hazardous condition, identity theft or fraud, 2 of those, 1 larceny, 6 medical aided or mental health, 2 noise complaints, 5 vehicle and traffic investigations, 3 village violation codes, 1 warrant, total of 42 moving summons, and 6 parking summons.
Oh,
I have a comment on the police
Sure.
report. This represents, what I write down is 93 shifts, and we got 42 tickets written. Now, we have serious problems on Tate Avenue with speeding
And Westchester.
and Westchester. And I'll even mention our little part of Kings Ferry Road, too. And I do not know about other streets in the village as to their complaints. But certainly, just between Westchester and Tate, this figure should be more like 180 tickets. I mean, this is disgraceful. I do not know what's going on. I mean, this represents the 93 shifts, and you have 42 tickets?
Well, we
I mean,
can,
they're out there for 8 hours in a shift, and that's all we get. And for the month of August, of which we all know live in this village, there's more hectic traffic going up and down, especially right after between 5 and 7 o'clock at night, with all the people running around without mufflers on their motorbikes, speeding up and down the streets, and the same thing with a lot of automobiles. These people come home from work and they think this is the Indianapolis 500 running around here. And we're not, and we wrote 42 tickets for 93 shifts. That's a disgrace. And I think we need a report from the chief of police as to why this is so low, and with all the complaints that we keep getting.
okay, if it's the board's pleasure, we can ask the chief to come in, to have a conversation with the board, if that's,
That would be fine. I think that, we do have to remember there's only one person on duty at a time, so maybe we should have the chief sit outside with a radar gun.
okay, so we will be discussing this.
One of the
Yes.
things that I had brought up some time ago was what we would have to go through to get a electric radar system set up in the village that would, by camera, I think it was, to take a picture of a speeder and see if that could work. And I know it's the city uses it and other jurisdictions use it. I don't know what we would have to go through to make it so in the village. But I
Are
think-
there cameras that'll
Yeah.
give speeding tickets? 'Cause I know they have the red light cameras.
Yeah, no, they have speeding.
I got a speeder that way.
Yeah,
Really?
I'll
Yeah.
admit I did.
Yeah,
It was
so-
in Delaware, but I certainly did.
Yeah,
It's a very
so
good
it's-
camera.
yeah, it's a
It goes
camera.
right to your plate, front and back. And
Yeah.
you got your speed and you get it in the mail and you pay
and,
it.
yeah, no points and you
No
pay the
points,
fee.
you just pay.
So, but I think that should be looked into as an alternative.
Okay. See if that technology is available for us.
As long as I know where it is, so I
And
can
it's-
slow
it's-
down.
Depends on the cost.
Yeah.
Two.
The other question I have where it says suspicious incidents 12, can we drill down on that and get an idea as to exactly what those are?
Mhm.
That's it.
Okay, good, thank you. All right, when we speak to the chief, then we can, get clarification on any of these things here.
Good point, Rich.
Thank you.
Okay, so that has been received and filed. Fire inspector's report, September 2017, received and filed. Wastewater report, May 2017, received and filed. And the attorney's report is next.
The only thing I have for you is I'm going to hand you what I'd like you to look at maybe and be ready to discuss. It came up recently that our village doesn't have sort of a prior written notice requirement for, and I'm sure you all know, like the pothole law. Are you familiar with it? So you're driving down the road and you fall into a pothole and you make a claim against the village and you say, you know, that thing was huge and now I have a blowout. Most, if not all, communities have the requirement that the village would have had to be put on notice in order to be held responsible for that. It will also protect, so, and I'm just giving you a brief, because you haven't read it. It would give the village the ability to have notice before being sued or a claim being made for things we don't know about. So it kind of puts the onus on the person out there. If you see a sidewalk that's defective, you know, let the village know. Shoot an email to Anthony or to Kevin or whoever, because it gives the, like I said, it gives the village the opportunity to go and correct it. And I was really quite surprised that we don't have this, and I think it's pretty critical that we do.
All right, good.
So
We will,
take a look at it and,
Look at this, and then we can put it on.
Is there a time to remedy that's included in that? or
yes. Yeah,
Reasonable?
Have we been,
yes.
okay. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
There's current litigation, yes.
Okay,
Which
good,
prompted me to say,
good, okay.
that's all well, yeah, that's all I have. We're gonna be busy in planning. I think I told you that last month. We have a couple projects coming in that I think will be on the agenda, which will make it all interesting again, and.
It's always interesting.
It's always interesting, but perhaps some things will get cleaned up, so.
All right,
But I'll
good.
keep you advised.
Good.
That's all I
Thank you.
have for you.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. Kevin, what do you have for us tonight?
I just have a few things. I just want to let everybody know that the paving's wrapped up. I think most people know that by now. They were Paley and Construction. They were great to work with. I also want to let everybody know that we have a curb and sidewalk bid out currently. A small one. We want to do a few sections of sidewalk and some of the curbs, some of the drop curbs that have been damaged. We'll see how this works out. I mean, the work required in the bid is to be completed by November 1st, so we can get it in here and get it done. We're giving this, because next year I also wanted to point out that the Paline bid that we piggybacked on with the town is open again till September of 2018. So this might be a way, because I know some of the roads we want to do next have the concrete curbs in it. Maybe we'll find a way to put the bid out first, put the curbs in place, and then have Paline, because that's more of just a mill and pave contract.
They don't
So I just want to let everybody know that that's going on.
Okay, good.
Also, in the clerk's office, we've met with a few companies, because I know some of the board members are interested in starting to take credit card payments. And also, we met with another company that will actually allow us to do online payments as well, for maybe tax bills, water bills, we start like that. So we're kind of seeing who other municipalities have used, and getting them in there, see what we like about the system, and see how it's going to work out. Our audit was completed. We should have the final audit probably sometime in January, so that went well. I just want to update everybody, the window treatment should be in shortly and then installed within a couple of days. So that'll be completed as soon as they come in. I haven't heard from them yet, but he said about a month. So I mentioned it last month, so we should be getting close to that point that we should have the stuff here. I just want to let everybody know the Halloween upcoming events. We have the parade and party on the 28th, and it would start at the pavilion at 10:30 and then come up to here to Village Hall afterwards. Our leaf vac will start picking up somewhere around October 16th. I just want to remind everybody not to rake their leaves into the street. And the last day for the chipper will probably be October 9th and 10th. It's all on the calendar, but I just figured if I could
Okay,
get the
good.
word
No,
out.
it's good to,
We reached out to Cablevision and Fios and had the technicians in and out of here, and the signals now seem to be going out very nicely.
much better.
So,
Verizon, I
on
can
both, actually.
announce
So,
that, yes.
That's nice to put that to rest.
Yeah,
and
thank you. Thank
get a
you
good
for
signal
following
coming
through
out of
on
here.
that.
I just want to let everybody know the RFQ that we received for energy audit and energy services. I gave everybody a copy here to start looking at it, maybe something we want to talk about at the workshop next month.
Okay.
And then if we decide to move forward, we probably need a resolution in November to move forward and enter into the contract phase where then they start doing the real deep audit work on the energy services. And next month, the first Tuesday is Election Day. I didn't know what you guys want to do with the meeting. Do you want to move it to Monday or to Wednesday? I know in certain cases we've done it either way, but I just wanted to try to get input on everybody so we can get it into the calendar.
What would work for the board?
Monday for me.
The 6th?
November 6th. Is that good? It's
Monday?
good for me.
Okay.
I'm always around.
Monday. And the last thing I just wanted to update everybody on is that we have the meetings online on the website now, so that people can come and watch us at any time.
Nick was showing me, yeah.
Yeah, and
pretty
it's a
cool.
nice feed, it comes out
Yeah.
nicely, and we'll be able to keep so many months on the website so people can go back and look at them. And that's all I have.
Okay, and my question to you is, where are we with the crack ceiling?
Crack ceiling, I reached out to the company that's on the state bid. I'm waiting for feedback from them and whether they can come down and how soon they can get us
I think
in.
we have about a month.
Probably about a
before we
month,
can-
yeah.
Yeah, because especially over on Broadway out in front of Indian Point there. It's, the road's starting to
Mm-hmm. Yep.
open in the middle, so there's, we can run through again some of the streets. I know
Right,
we did it
sure.
with George, the engineer, but
Okay.
we can
I know
always run
George has
through
an
and see.
an ongoing spreadsheet of
Okay, good.
areas.
Yeah, we need to.
Of need.
Any idea when Con Ed is gonna fix up there?
I've reached out several emails. I have not gotten confirmation back on that, as we,
Well, they're taking a lot of heat from Peekskill. They're taking a lot of heat from Yorktown now.
Sure.
They've done road work and just left the roads in shamble. And we have a small section.
Right,
And,
correct.
yeah, we just, by Nick's house down to Kings Ferry. We have that one lane that they will be doing. And next year we'll do the other
It's
side.
interesting that with that paved stripe, what cars are doing, they all drive over the center line.
Right, yeah.
Because nobody wants to drive on that. It's kind of bumpy.
I'll follow up with them and I'm gonna keep on them
Yeah,
to
'cause
see when they get
the-
back.
When are the blacktop plants close? When it starts getting cold? So we might, we're looking at probably another month there too.
About a month or so.
And I'd like
yeah.
to get that done because people walk on that road.
Absolutely, and I let them know that we did have somebody that tripped and fell there, so, I put them on notice, I let
They're
them know.
on notice.
Yeah,
They're on notice.
I did.
Yeah.
We should sue Con Ed.
That was after the work was done
Right.
or recently? We're
That
talking
was
about
after
the woman that fell
the
last,
work that was done.
the woman that
on-
fell like last year, you mean?
There was
Or
another one that was.
there was another
There was
fall?
another one. Triple fall.
Recently?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. That's all
So-
I have for you.
Okay, thank you. So it's my turn here. I first of all want to thank the Buchanan Beautification Committee. They have done a fantastic job. They have cleaned out the center where the clock is. It looks good. And also, they have replaced a lot of the barrels with new barrels and planted some beautiful mums. And you know what? It's a good group of people. They're doing a lot of good work for the village, so I thank them for that. This Thursday evening will be our first Buchanan 2021 meeting. And we have an interesting group of people. There's people who have been long-term residents here. There's some new residents that are here. And what we're going to do, talking about at Buchanan 2021, it's looking forward on from when Indian Point closes. So we're looking to reinvent ourselves, number one, and what their thoughts are on that. But we're also going to be looking at the way we do things here in the village. So they have a bunch of things that they'll be dealing with. And also what their thoughts are on the reuse of the property, what, the residents would like to see for the reuse of the property at Entergy. And other pieces of property that we have here in the village that are available. So I'm looking forward to that, and that should be some really interesting meetings.
time and place?
Time is 7:30 on Thursday, second floor. So we will be discussing at that time too, Eileen. Eileen, you can't,
Calendar says 7.
did it? Okay, it's 7 o'clock then. I thought we were going to keep it all the same time, but, yeah, that's okay. So if the calendar says that, it's 7 o'clock, and we're going to talk that night about what's the best night for everyone and what time. So you can't be there Thursday? Okay. Okay, all right. Yeah, well, we'll just, we're going to kind of introduce each other and talk about things, and then we'll get into the meat of it. I'll have an agenda for the meeting too. So, and then after that, the group will meet once a month and, talk things out, what they feel. I was at the state task force meeting last week, and I think what I have to start doing is actually putting it on our Facebook, but not everybody's on Facebook, so I might have to put it on our website. The different things that get talked about at this meeting, but I think the biggest takeaway for me and the most important thing for the village was that the state has hired a consultant for the reuse of the property. So they have already talked to the town about different parcels of land that they had available. And what the drawback is for the town to develop and bring in business is they do not have a sewer system such as we have. So this gives us, a little bit of an edge. So when we talk about the reuse of the property, there's 240 acres, and I've said this before, but I just, for people that haven't heard it, there is pieces of the Entergy property that could be used before they decommission. So the acreage in the middle where the plant is operating now, of course, that can't be used. The plant has to be decommissioned. All that structure will be coming down, so they'll need places to pile it. But there are a few spaces. There's right by our Lents Cove ball field, there's approximately 60 acres that has never been used. So what the state will do is they're going to come in now and look at these parcels. So there's that parcel. There's a parcel going towards Verplank. That's a potential. And also there's a parcel of land that Entergy owns that's next to the cemetery on that side of the road. There's how many acres did we figure out it was? Yeah, it's at 10, 15 acres.
I think
It was a substantial piece. So that's something else that's going to be looked at. Also, Kevin and I have spoken to another company that has substantial property here in the village to see if they'd be willing to. So we're not looking to have this property given to us, the Village of Buchanan. I'm a firm believer that government should not own property or be in the business of real estate. So what we're looking to do is to bring a developer or a business in with Entergy and have them purchase the property from Entergy. So the reason why we're doing this is because we're losing a huge amount of our tax base. So we're looking to replace some of that. We're not going to replace $3 million of our tax base with whatever, unless I don't know what kind of business would come in, but that would give us $3 million in taxes. But so that's what the push is, to look at the reuse of the property. We're looking for our tax base, and we've talked about this before. This is not just a one approach to this problem. It's a multi-pronged approach, multifaceted approach. So we're looking to replace our tax base. We're going to also be looking at the way we do business, can we do things more efficiently? So that's something that Rich, I'm sure, and Nick will get into with the survey. So there's other opportunities. We have, and I've spoken about this before, so I'm just kind of quickly repeating myself. So for someone who just happened to tune in and they're wondering what's going on in the village and what we're doing, most people are aware New York State has a cessation fund. So when the nuclear power plant closes, they will compensate us almost 80% for the first year of our loss, and it goes down 10% each year for 7 years. So we're just looking at different ways to mitigate the loss in the revenue from Indian Point. Another thing which is fairly new, and it was there was legislation that was being proposed by the mayor in Zion, Illinois. And that, I spoke to him last week, that was announced this past Sunday. His senator and assembly person they introduced the bill. The bill will be going to Congress, and we have to all work in the country for people who have nuclear power plants in their communities to go after this money. This money is money that the Department of Energy has collected from the ratepayers, and I found out Indian Point $500 million of Indian Point's money was given to the Department of Energy to find a permanent repository, a permanent place to store the spent nuclear rods. So Congress just opened that up last week again to be looking into Yucca Mountain because, you know what? This is 30 years that this has been going on, and there's still no permanent repository for the spent nuclear waste. So this is something, they're doing this again with Yucca Mountain. And you know, my thought on it is, if you haven't figured it out in 30 years, obviously Yucca Mountain is not the place. We get into, there's a lot of political pushback on opening Yucca Mountain. There's also geological, environmental problems. So there's a problem with the site. So, and I just want to be really clear about something. If we are able to get this money from the Department of Energy, we are not, this is so important because I don't want people to misunderstand that it's okay and we wanting to have this here permanently. We do not want this waste here permanently. But if we have to have it here because there's no other place, the Department of Energy, the federal government has not found a place for it, then we should be compensated for storing it because we're going to be an interim storage facility whether we like it or not. And I know at one of the meetings a couple of months ago, I took a lot of heat. We were talking about if and when the waste gets moved, it actually goes on a barge down the Hudson River to a port in New Jersey. That's how they'll transport it. So it's not going to come out the front gate on the roads or anything. And I was told absolutely not. And yes, that is the route that it will go. From where it goes there, I'm not sure. But you have to realize too, I don't know if anyone has seen it, once they're shifting the waste out of the pool, there's a piece of equipment that goes like at a snail's pace. It is so heavy that it just slowly putts along to go over to the pad. So you got to consider all those things. But the most important thing is we want to make sure that it's safe. The storage is safe here. You know, this is our community, and we don't want to see anything go wrong. So there's a lot of balls in the air, like I said, you know, so it's kind of hard, you know, to tell everyone what's going to happen in the end. But I just want people to know that things are being worked on, things are being looked at. You know, there's the Cortland Task Force meeting, which has been basically informational. You know, there's different speakers that come in every month. And next month, the NRC will be there. I've heard the NRC speak many times. They'll probably be talking about the decommissioning process. So this is a very difficult process that we're going through, but we're going through it slowly and trying to dot all our I's and cross our T's and make sure that we're mitigating the loss of that revenue. And that's what I meant to tell you too. The company that the state has hired is the DL English Consulting. And they were hired by New York State Research and Development, the NYSERDA, and they're going to conduct a site reuse study. So that is currently what's happening. The good thing is we have a sewer treatment plant, so that helps us with the development of anything we want to do. To bring in business, et cetera, et cetera. So, to be continued. All right, thank you.
I would think that the use of the sewer plant that would not be taking place when the plant closes would allow for a lot more other uses.
A lot more capacity,
A lot more capacity, yeah.
Because you've got to consider there's 1,000 people that work there approximately every day. So it frees up a lot of our capacity at our sewer plant.
Was there any timetable with that New York State consultant that was going to go in and study the land use?
They will, they have to have the report done by April of 2018. So it's not a lot of time.
That's pretty short in government
Yes.
standards.
Yes, very. So, yeah. so.
Will you be involved or in communication with them or as they do that?
They'll be coming to us next to speak to us, and I have told Megan.
Coming to the
Kidder-
board?
Coming, well, we can come to the board if they would like. You know, they'll be coming to the village, and we will be.
Is that what you meant when you said us, coming to us?
Yeah, they could, I could ask them to come to the board, but they will be meeting with the village, and we will be outlining which properties that we think have the potential to be developed. It's more than you think, you know, so it's not just the
Yeah.
60 acres, so Kevin and I have been working on that. Okay, thank you. Who would like to go next? Trustee Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and again, thank you for all the work that you do with the task force and keeping the village apprised of what's going on. Village of Buchanan. If you have dogs and you take them out, please make sure you pick up the poop. Don't put it in the drain or throw it in the street.
Yep, I see them in the catch basins.
Yes, or in the catch basin. So just, you know, making sure that we are cognizant of that. And we'll keep it moving. On a lighter note, you know, kids are back in school, back on their bikes, so beware of our children in the streets. We will be doing an open house for the kids over at BV at our Historical Society, and that date will be posted. And on a sober note, with the things happening in the world and certainly in Las Vegas, everyone, if you see something, say something. I mean, we're our own little part of the county, but we do have a nuclear power plant, which could be a target. To our young people, if you're at school and you see something that doesn't look right, go tell your gym teacher, your principal, your guidance counselor. Let's not take anything for granted. We're all in this together, and as my dad always used to say, 4 eyes are better than 2, and 1,000 eyes are better than 100. So be safe out there, and have a great Buchanan Day.
All right, thank you. Trustee Funchin.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple of things. I attended the ceremony for the dedication of the site for 9/11 down in Croton, and it was a very moving experience, and thank you to all that contributed to it, especially our trustee here, Nick, who was part of the initial group that put together the monument. It is really, if you haven't been down there, go, because it really is heart-wrenching to go down and just think of what happened on that day. So it was well put together by the town. Also, the Buchanan Committee of Colleen, Norma, and Beth, I'd like to congratulate them and have done such a fantastic job. I would want to point out especially Colleen Lonigan, who really did most of the work, and there wouldn't be a Buchanan Day this year if it wasn't for Colleen, I'd say. She really does so much for that particular day and for the village, because she's also involved in the St. Patrick's Day Parade Committee, so kudos to her. Also, Nick and I worked on the survey, and we hope to have Kevin, we're going to get that out in November, right? And we are going to also have it online. Please, this is the opportunity for everybody in the village to give us their thoughts on how we should approach the board, how we should approach the challenges of energy closing. We want to get an idea of what the people in the village want. Do they want to continue everything and have to pay more taxes if that's the case, or what they would be willing to give up? And it's all a personal thing for each and every household in the community. So the more that we hear from, the better that we can make a decision on what we have to do in the future. And lastly, I'd like to wish all my Italian friends a happy Columbus Day. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. You know, with the survey too, we can set some dates up here. So before that goes out, let's set up some dates here in November. where if people want to come in to fill it out that night, or they want to talk about it, they can come in, and whatever board members want to come in.
Put it on the agenda for a workshop or something?
Yeah,
do that.
that might be, yeah. one
But,
in
you know,
November.
I think it's got to be
Yeah.
separate, because you know why? Because they're going to actually be filling it out. So if we have it on the second floor, then, you know, if they have questions or they want to say something, or, you know, I'd be willing to do it, like, you know, coffee
Yeah,
with the
okay.
mayor, and
Yeah, sure.
any of the board members that want to be there that night would be, you know, that'd be great too, okay?
Yeah, it would be exclusively for the survey thing.
Yeah.
You're right, nothing else,
specifically,
right.
Right.
Okay,
Because it might get involved. They might,
Right.
you know, people have a lot of questions. Well, who's next here? Trustee Zachary. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Trustee Pasquale is not with us this evening. Something came on.
Thank you. Just as far as the survey goes, just one thing to follow up on what Trustee Funchin was saying. The survey has a lot of ideas. We're at the point of raising every possible idea. We're asking you to state, do you think you would prefer A, B, C, or D? The fact that something on the survey doesn't mean it's going to happen. Some people jump to conclusions, but it would be negligent of our responsibilities if we didn't look at every option, examine every potential cost, every potential savings. So the fact that you see it on the survey, it's a hard reality. It doesn't mean it's going to, you know, potentially, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. You know, as the mayor was talking about redevelopment to help restore some of the tax base that we'll lose from Indian Point, you know, that's something that's not going to happen overnight. You know, so there's a lot of possibilities and a lot of interacting things here. But as Rich said, we want to get the sentiment of the village residents to help us in making our decisions. Also want to follow what Rich said about Buchanan Day, and I think luckily we had a great day, and there was a lot of work put in, as Rich said, by Colleen, Norma, and Beth, as well as Rich himself. I was not involved this year, so Rich is the one that tied it together, although I do agree, Colleen is definitely the workhorse in that group, and really, you know, when the years that I was involved with that, she was just, you know, she was what made a lot of it happen. Not to belittle what anybody else did, but she definitely did a whole lot more than I did. I also, another follow-up, on the 9/11 ceremony, I was also there, and what Trustee Funchin didn't say is that he gave the most stirring speech of the day. It was a very personal, emotional speech, you know, Trustee Funchin was there, worked in that area, and was there during that time, and he gave this speech that was so incredible. I was going over to look at his notes because I thought he must have read that, but it was all spontaneous and from the heart, and definitely a moving speech.
thank you, Nick.
I have to, I'm noticing now that this, a lot of what the mayor is involved with, as far as the village and Indian Point closing, and this 2021 committee, will intersect and overlap with the comprehensive plan committee that I'm involved with. The next meeting of the comprehensive plan committee is Tuesday, the 17th at 6:30 p.m., second floor here. And the committee is small, but it's a dedicated group, and we have been discussing a lot of things that really have relevance to what we're talking about, redeveloping land, not only Indian Point properties, but other properties around the village, business development around the village. And I think at this point that I would like to have a specific workshop meeting just for the issue, just for the purpose of discussing the comprehensive plan and some of the things that we are talking about in our meetings. one of the things, and it might be premature, is we recognize that currently that land on the north end of Indian Point, that's 60 or 70 acres, whatever it is zoned M2, and our code says that the only allowed use is peaceful use of nuclear energy. So clearly, we're not going to have peaceful use of nuclear energy there, and that parcel, as we were discussing in our last couple of meetings, probably needs to get rezoned. And I think that it would be well done in conjunction with the findings from that state group that the mayor was just talking about. But that's only one thing. We're also looking at changing some of the things that are allowed on our zoning code. Has a schedule of use regulations. Section 211-10 defines for each zone in the village, residential or commercial, what is allowed by right, what is allowed by special use permit. And in making up this schedule of use regulations, the village has the ability to steer development. So we're looking at, the areas that we all know need a little bit of, would benefit from some redevelopment or new development along the 9A corridor, along the Village Circle, White Street, and those areas. There are certain things that we're discussing that might help development there, perhaps allowing townhouses. Right now, in the C2 zone, most of the 9A is a C2 zone, and buildings are allowed there that are commercial buildings with apartments above or behind. We've talked about getting rid of the behind part and just allowing above, because I don't know that we want housing behind commercial buildings on 9, that doesn't make sense. But, there's a lot we're discussing, and it's important, I think, at this point, for the village board to weigh in, and I'd like to share in more detail some of the things we're discussing. So, can we arrange a separate workshop? I don't know if we could set a date for that. That would be wonderful. So is that?
What's the board's pleasure? October, November, we're kind of, I want to advertise it too. I want people to know.
All right, so.
You have to do it in November, because you can't advertise
Do November,
it
so
yet.
it's advertised,
Yeah.
that's, okay, that's fine. November, we have a meeting, we have our board meeting the first week of November. How about the second week of November?
Mm-hmm.
The Tuesday, the 14th? Can we do that?
Do you want to make it maybe a Wednesday so it stands out more? That
I
people don't
prefer
think it's
Tuesday, Thursday
Okay,
evening,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah, so,
I mean, it doesn't really matter. That's
Yeah.
Tuesday's fine too.
Tuesday, the 14th? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll work.
Thank you.
Same
and that's
time?
going to be specifically to
just
talk
for
about the
Just
comprehensive
plan,
okay.
yes, yes.
7:30?
7:30.
On Tuesday.
Yeah,
Yep.
so another thing we talked about in that C2 zone, like if you think about that property next to the hardware store, for example, we don't know what's going to happen there, but that it might benefit us to encourage, maybe encourage townhouses or encourage small apartment buildings, which might require allowing a taller height than our code currently allows throughout the village. A maximum height is 35 feet. But a location like that could take an apartment building. And so these are a lot of things I'd like to get input from the board. I would ask you to review this, whatever you have time and can review in the current master plan, but specifically, if you could look over this schedule of use regulations and
That's in the current plan, Nick?
this is in our zoning code.
Okay.
21110 is the schedule of use regulations in the zoning code.
Yeah.
Kevin, did you print these? I think you printed these, right?
Yeah.
So actually, maybe if you can get each board member one of these, a copy
I
of
had one
the,
up there too. I don't know where that disappeared to.
It's
that-
also online, general code.
it is, but
That one that we had was from Maryland,
which
Oh,
one?
Marilyn gave
the
it.
big one.
Oh, okay, but this one here, if everybody has a copy of this, which is the map of where the different zones are, and 21110 the chart of what's allowed in each of those zones. If everybody could familiarize themselves somewhat with that, we'd have a good starting point. And whatever you have time to go through on the master plan. Let's see, I also want to, Kevin, the administrator, did mention about the meetings now, the videos being on the village website. And I just want to thank him and our videographer for getting that done, because that's something I've wanted for a long time, and it's very useful. I don't know if you've ever watched any of our meetings on TV. They're not that exciting. But
They can be entertaining, though.
well, oh yes, they're definitely entertaining. But what's great with it being on the website is that you can, it's basically a YouTube link, I believe, is that correct? So you can actually drag the cursor, if it's a 2-hour meeting or a 1-hour meeting, you could drag the cursor and it shows you the still of where you are. So you can pull the cursor across, and if you're looking for a particular discussion, or if you're looking, I find it useful to go back if we're following up from one meeting to the next. It's a quick way to access what we discussed, what did so-and-so say, what did I say. I can also look back and see what tie I wore, so I don't wear the same tie 2 months in a row. It's very useful.
That's important.
And you could do it at your convenience on the village website, www.villageofbuchanan.com. And I think that's about it right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the floor? Anyone with comments? No? Oh, okay.
Okay, Teresa, I do thank you for all the work you have been doing and continue to do. I do agree that the beautification committee has done a wonderful job. Those barrels look great, very, very colorful.
They raised money to get new barrels. I mean,
Yeah,
they're
it
really
looks,
workers.
it does look very nice.
Yeah.
So kudos to them. I just wanted to go back to the resolution that was passed for the building inspector. What is the fee at the bottom of that? Does anybody know what fee you're charging for a new CO?
For the
I'm trying to
CO,
remember what the current one is.
Is it in there?
Should be.
Those are penalties of law, but the fee for the CO, I want to say it's $150, but I'm not 100%.
What did you say?
I think it's 150. I'm not 100% sure, though,
150.
without having the fee schedule here in front of me.
Okay. Can you put that on a little notepad there?
Sure.
Because it does not state that in there. And I think that's another little tidbit that should be disseminated. That's it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Eileen. All right, if there's no more comments, motion to close
So
the
moved.
meeting? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Have a great Buchanan day.